want to talk about why do we doubt? Why do we doubt, and why aren't we looking at where these questions we have are coming from? I decided to look at Bloom's taxonomy so that we talk about knowledge. How do we think? And what is it that makes us Kenyans fear giving our opinions for the fear of being subjective? Because when I thought about it, the class last week, I remember, and this is something that might strike people as odd, I said that in chapters 4 and 5, when you're analyzing the data and when you're talking about the implications of that data, what we want to hear is what you think. And in Kenya, that is not done. People think that opinions are bad. People think that opinions are too subjective. They're not factual. And I want to explain what kind of reasoning, where it comes from and why it doesn't work. The Wazungu have this thing called Bloom's taxonomy, where it's a hierarchy of levels of thinking. So they have the base, where it's about remembrance or memory, memorizing and repeating. And then at the top is creativity. You can look on the internet for Bloom's taxonomy, but what I want to do is to change the way it is done, and I'll explain why. As Africans, we like circles. Me, I don't think it's a coincidence that our traditional homes were round rather than square, because the circle suggests sort of everybody can see one another when you have a circle. Like I said, if you check on the internet, you have Bloom's taxonomy, which is showed as a pyramid. But for me, I do it as a circle. The most basic level of thinking is facts. This one just requires us to recall facts. We don't have to process anything. We just measure things and repeat them. There's no input from us. That's simply remembering. And then you have understanding. Understanding is where you say, what does this mean? And this is so important. I try to explain it to my undergrads, but the poor kids get lost with what I'm saying. Take, for example, if there are 3 accidents at the same place, the first time you just say, oh, it was an accident, and you remember it. The second time you say it was an accident, you remember it. But the third time, based on that memory, you start to ask, what does it mean? So now that's where you say maybe there's a problem with the road, or the road needs to be repaired, or whatever. That's another level of thinking where you're going beyond the facts and starting to interpret, what does this mean? And that is understanding. So you can say either it means the road was badly built, or corruption, somebody was supposed to repair the road and didn't, or we don't need a road anymore. Whatever the case, that comes from understanding. Then there's application. Application is, when I understand it that way, how can I apply this elsewhere? If the engineer says it's because there's a bump over here instead of 5 meters ahead, that's why we are having accidents, then what happens is that the next time you're building a road, when you have a similar structure, you say, last time when we built the road, we did this is what happened. From that theory about roads and bumps and where to put them, we're going to apply them when we are building this other road. So that's application, meaning that you're using the knowledge you got from one place and applying it to somewhere else. The next one is to analyze. To analyze is to say, based on the application, you now analyze what are the parts. You look at maybe many roads. You look at how you repaired them, what is experience you have had with each one, how the lessons from one apply to the other, and then you analyze what are the things that we need to consider. What is it that made the road succeed in one place or another? So you're analyzing the parts. You're going beyond the surface of saying, this is how we make the new road, and you're just going in depth and saying, what is it about the way we've done the road that has made it work or not work? And that's what analysis is. The next one is now evaluating. Evaluating is where you make judgments. This is now the subjective. Evaluating is saying, is this something that we want to follow through? Is it worthwhile? So for example, you can look at the cost of all the things that you have done and you say, no, I don't think, I think given the amount of money we've spent, I think we better just do away with the road. That's a judgment. And yes, it's subjective because somebody else can say, it's only costing 200 million, why not do it again? So you see, you have to make a judgment call. And that's inevitable. There's nowhere we can think without making judgments. And those judgments, somewhere, somebody will say it is subjective. And then finally, you create something new. This is where you now graduate, having done a thesis. You will produce a thesis that creates new knowledge, and now you're good to go. You have created something new. I think our chapters are sort of modeled on that premise. So in chapter 1, you give the facts. You're giving a background and introduction. You're saying, this thing matters here. This happened somewhere else. People are worried about. It's basically facts. And then you look at the facts and then you say in your questions, this is what I want to go and find out, because these facts raise these questions and I want to go and do research about what those facts mean. And then chapter 2 is where you understand. That's where you're saying, other people have studied similar problems like this one I'm talking about. This is what they say it means. So you go through 2-3 people, that's what you call theory. You cite 2-3 people, discuss what they understand a similar problem to mean. And then you say, but for me, it still doesn't explain enough. It doesn't explain enough because they're using a different sample size, or they're using a different theory, or whatever. It's up to you to say, it's good, it tells us a few things, but it's not enough. I need to understand more. So there has to be a passion on your part for you to say, I need to understand more. I need to go further. And then chapter 3 is where now you say, this is how I'm going to study it. Based on what these guys are saying, I want to apply. I want to apply knowledge to the same problem, and this is how I'm going to do it. I'm going to go out to the field, do observation, do questionnaires, do library research, whatever. That's where you say, I want to find out if this question applies here in Kenya. So some people sometimes even say, oh, it studied at the coast, but the coast temperatures are different, so I want to do it in Nandi. So you're applying it. You're sort of asking, does it happen elsewhere? Then in chapter 4 is where you get the data and you analyze the parts. You analyze and you say, this is what the data I got says, and it looks like this because this, that. So you're breaking it down in parts and you're analyzing it. And then in chapter 5 is where you now make judgments. You say, this is what it means. You're making judgments about what are the implications of the results I have. Sometimes people say it means the people in this other study, they didn't quite do the right thing, that kind of thing. But it's you to make those judgments, but you're making the judgments, remember, based on chapter 2. The theories you picked in chapter 2, the concepts you pick in chapter 2, are the tools with which you will evaluate the judgments that you will make in chapter 5. And then you create something new and you graduate and you're a genius. This is what happens in Kenya, unfortunately. And this is why we doubt ourselves. We have doubt always planted in our minds. It's because many times people stop us here. After we apply what, they tell us, they stop us. They don't allow us to analyze and they don't allow us to evaluate, because they say, oh, you're not objective, that's your opinion, that kind of thing. And in the end, what happens is that Kenyans stop creating new knowledge because they are being stopped here at the application stage, where you're applying theories mainly from other people. You're applying, and then you're stopped there. You're not allowed to analyze, and you're not allowed to make judgments. And within the university, you see this is where now people reduce their analysis to percentages. I remember sometimes I get frustrated because a student has really good data, and then I ask, so what did you think about that? And all you see is a percentage. 10% of people said this and that. Then I'm asking, what does that mean? Then they just say, yeah, 10% people thought that. Fear of making an analysis. Sometimes you even ask a student, why do you think people responded that way? And they fear that, oh, that will be subjective. I can't give an opinion. They just hedge around answering the questions because they're in a defense. They don't want to look whatever. And sometimes we are just asking, now that you know this thing, you're the expert, you did the study, what do you think could have explained this? And sometimes when you push the students, they eventually say what they think. And then you're like, why isn't this in the study? So if you're going to the field and you're researching and you've read, you have enough expertise to make an analysis. And then when it comes to evaluating, you can make a judgment because you've gone to the field. Some people just reduce themselves to giving recommendations. Recommendations is just saying what others should do. But what do you think? What do you think should be done? How are you disagreeing or agreeing with other people? That's the level of thinking that we are not allowed. And I can tell you in how many ways that happens here in Kenya, which is why I've been saying we live in a strange land. And those are the questions that stop us. We are told that's your subjective opinion. Where is the evidence? We are told that. In fact, my friend Chichi made noise about that the other day. You have studied, you have read, you have talked about, you're basically an expert, and then you're asked for evidence. You're asked where is it published? And usually publishing means not in a Kenyan publication. You're asked for a solution. Basically, you're being told, stop analyzing, stop making judgments, just tell us what to do. That's what that question is asking. They're asking you to suspend your expertise and to suspend your knowledge. You tell us what to do. Stop giving us opinions. And then there's also let us not blame. This is a very good tactic where if you mention some people who are adversely affected or implicated, people say, let's not blame. This is not a blame game. We are all innocent. But usually you're analyzing an issue. You're not talking about personalities or their morality. But we are asked not to blame as a way of stopping us from analyzing. Or we are told to not generalize. Not all people have done that. So you now are stuck in saying, I'm not talking about this, I'm not condemning this. But really what is happening is that you've been prevented from analyzing and from evaluating. What ends up happening when we refuse to analyze and evaluate, you start to doubt yourself. You start to say, even though I have a master's, even though I have gone to school, even though I've done this thing, I don't really know. So you start asking, where has it worked before? Okay, because you've been stopped. You've been stopped from analyzing and evaluating. You just now go straight to where has it worked before, which is basically about application. You just stick at application, and that's where many of my contemporaries are stuck, looking for policies that work, documents that work, laws that work, just applying and applying and applying, because everybody will tell you, no, just tell us where it has worked before and what we need to do. So how do we stop this from happening? Because it's so rampant and I'm so frustrated by it. People are just timid, intellectually timid, expecting acceptance, expecting to prove that we are worth thinking, instead of just going ahead, making an analysis and making an evaluation. And this is how we stop. We have to see knowledge as all round. Knowledge isn't simply about the degrees that we get or the schools that we go to. When something happens, as you can see from event, let's say something happens, our first reaction is to feel something about it. So we either feel sad or stressed or angry, but there's something we feel about it. And those feelings are determined by our spirituality and our identity. Whatever knowledge has been passed on to you, or either as a family or as a community, those things influence the way you feel. Your identity as a part of a group influences the way you feel. So, for example, when there's gender violence, you see people of one gender feeling really deeply about it because their identity in that particular gender makes them react, or their spirituality makes them react to that event. But it's not enough to just feel. We have to think. What does thinking mean? It means evaluating that event using theory, using experience, and using history. Okay, so you integrate, you don't just say, this is how I felt, it was so bad, but now you start looking beyond yourself and you say, what is it that is happening to us? Why is this violence happening all the time? So you start to theorize. You start to look at the patterns in history. You start to look at people's experiences. And then once you start thinking, it's not enough to think. And this is where, in fact, even opinions are not, we have not reached opinions. Thinking is simply thinking. We are analyzing using different data. But as we think, we also learn, and we learn from conversation. We learn from people. We learn from going to school. We learn from doing research. And what we are doing is reinforcing the things we think about, or changing our ideas, or questioning our ideas by looking at what other people are saying. So even in your chapter 2, basically what you're doing is having a conversation. It's not an oral conversation, it's a written conversation. You're looking at people's work and you're analyzing it. And you're saying, this is what it means. Okay, and you're also comparing your own ideas with their ideas. And you're saying, I agree with this one, I'm more sympathetic to this I disagree, but that's a conversation. And learning elevates our thinking. It makes it more sophisticated. And then if we want things to change in society based on the things we know, then that's what we call politics. Politics isn't simply voting and whatever. It's about society saying, what are we committed to? What is valuable to us? And what are we going to spend our resources on? That's politics. So politics involves all of us. It involves all of us. And imagine that this conversation about what do we do, because that's what politics is. Politics is a question, what do we do? It comes from everybody having their own feelings, thinking, and learning in different spaces. So I was giving the example of when we had COVID. COVID affected all sectors. It affected people's businesses. It affected people's health. It affected people's values, people's beliefs. Like when people get sick and they die, how do we process the grief? How do we do the last funeral rites? And the first people who died of COVID, if you remember, there were no funeral rites, and it was really horrible that their loved ones could not be near them when they were being buried. Those are issues of feelings, and they must be taken care of. So all the people who deal with those sectors, they come together to say, this is what we want as society. You have pastors talking about funeral rites. You have medical workers saying, this is what we need to get well. You have politicians saying, this is what we must do. These are the resources. You have business people saying, you know, everybody has to come together with their different feelings, thinkings, lessons, and all this to make a change. And then depending on the change and over time, then now we form a culture. Those politics and the decisions we made, they start being integrated in our culture. They start helping us form a philosophy that guides the kind of society we want. And then when an event happens in that society, the process starts again. We deal with our feelings, we think, we learn, we change, and then back to culture. That's the cycle of knowledge. And this cycle of knowledge can explain why Kenyans have a problem with tribalism. You know, people wonder, how is it that we have so many educated people, but when push comes to shove, they can't think, they only revert back to their identities? My friend Joe Kobuthi says that in Kenya, feelings are the only things Kenyans trust. He was explaining that because we are lied to so much about reason and other things, our feelings are the only things that we can trust because they are real. They are the realest thing that we have. But I also think it is because we are not allowed to go beyond our feelings. We are not allowed to think. We are stopped from thinking. You see, we need our feelings. We need our feelings to tell us at the first instance that there's something wrong, there's something pleasurable, there's something we need to be angry about, but we can't stop there. We have to process those feelings with theory, with work, with our history, with our experience, so that we can know what does it mean. And then we have conversations with people, and through those conversations, we have social change, and then the cycle goes on. But when we are stopped from going beyond our feelings, then we are stuck at our identities. We can't go beyond them. And that is why the end of tribalism is not going to come from diversity, because what we are saying is we don't need to think, we have to jump to a solution. We have to think. We have to think, what is it that makes us feel this way? And then we have to reach out to people through conversation and find out, are we feeling in the same way? What can we learn from each other before we go to the political issue of how can we live together? But when we are stopped from thinking and we are confined to just our feelings, because if we think, we are told, oh, that's theory, your work is useless, let's not go to the past, that is gone. You think you're the only one, why are you bothering us with your experience? And all those questions, all those comments are for gaslighting us so that we don't go beyond our identities. And that is why the people who come to copy in the university, who don't want to do the work, for them to go later on and start complaining about tribalism is really very ironical, because the opportunity you have to master how to think, not without your feelings, but through your feelings, and to go beyond them, that should be the work of education. But if you're not getting an education, you're getting a paper, then you live with a degree, but without being able to think, and you're stuck at your feelings, and that's the only lens within which you can read reality. And that now destroys our politics. I'm saying this because when we are writing our chapter 4 and our chapter 5, and we are using our opinions, it's not our opinions that are from the air, okay? We've studied, we've gone to the field, we've read people, we've sat many hours reading. What we are doing when we are going to defend our ideas at the defense, what we are saying is, I've done the work. What I think is informed by knowledge from elsewhere, and it's informed by knowledge from the field. So when I say that we have to say what we think, it barely has anything to do with being objective or subjective. It's saying we've done the work and we are informed enough to take a risk and say what we think. And unless we do that, we cannot create new knowledge, because new knowledge is created on informed opinions. So unless you didn't do the work, unless you, instead of analyzing, you decided to search in ChatGPT, and in fact, actually, ChatGPT is one of the ways in which we are being prevented from thinking, because we are being told, don't analyze, I have the answers for you. So it's a stop. It's another obstacle to us developing our own ideas, because we are now not doing the work of analyzing and evaluating. When you're in this space called the university, our understanding is that you've done the work, that you've read, you've researched, you've really thought about what you want to say, you've looked at the data, and so you do have the right to offer an opinion. And when you're offering an opinion, of course, it's subjective, but more importantly, you're supporting yourself with evidence. You have to make a call. You can't please everyone. There'll be some people who will disagree with you, but all of us coming together and bringing our opinions together is what makes knowledge rich. So we have to be brave. We have to be brave, but we cannot be brave if we are not doing the work. And that's why, another reason, we should not be using AI. We should do the work ourselves. We should do the work ourselves so that we can build our confidence to say, even if you disagree with me, I have my reasons for this opinion. I am using this evidence. I am human, I am not omniscient. Is it omniscient? Yes, I don't know everything. So I can only give you the knowledge that I know, based on the facts, the analysis, the data, the opinions, all those things. The knowledge I'm offering is what I know from all those studies that I have done. So the issue isn't whether I have a particular point of view. Of course I do. I do have a point of view, but it's informed by work, by knowledge, by what other people have said, by history. That's what coming to this place is for. It's for you to, it's like you're weaving a basket. You're weaving basket with many colors, with theories from here, data from here, opinions from here. The point isn't whether your theories are correct or your threads are the right color or what. The point is, when we look at the basket, is it a beautiful basket? Does it do what a basket is supposed to do? In what way is this basket unique, and in what way is it not? That's what knowledge is, in a nutshell. It's not complicated, but we live in a society that has made it so complicated for nothing, that has asked us very insidious questions. Are you sure? That's your opinion. Where did you hear it from? Did so-and-so really say? We are asked all these questions until we self-doubt, and then we say, okay, no, I won't offer my opinion because it's subjective, or because people will know it's from me. It's okay. It's supposed to be from somebody. An opinion is supposed to be from somebody. And those questions that make us self-doubt is what we call gaslighting. I don't know if you've heard of that term, to gaslight. What is gaslighting? Gaslighting is when you make people doubt themselves and doubt what they know. That's really what it is. And you do it by asking these very insidious questions or making these comments. So how do we prevent ourselves from being unsure of ourselves? We have to ask who is asking the questions. Now, when you come to the defense, of course, there is a bit of anxiety because you want to pass and graduate. But when you're being asked questions, you're not being attacked. You're not being told that your idea is wrong. It's your idea that is being subjected to rigor and questioning. And when people want you to answer the questions, it's not to prove you wrong, it's to strengthen your idea or to see the gap. Maybe there's a gap, there's something else you didn't think of. That's what defenses are for. I'm not saying that all lecturers do that, but that in principle, that's what it is. So when you go to your defense in that glorious day, Don't go fearing the way I see people fearing. Don't go fearing. Go in confidence that you have the right idea. You have the right idea, you have the data to prove it, and these people are just trying to sort of make sure that your idea is firm and to make you correct that idea. That's the principle of defense. And this matters because there's an article, there was an interview I did with The Nation in 2017. And one of the things I said was, part of why we have bad politics is because we don't know how to disagree. When people disagree, we take it personally. We say, oh, they don't like me. Or they see there's something wrong with what I did. No. Or they're saying I shouldn't have had an opinion. No. And in fact, people have read your work when they ask you specific questions about what you said. When other people are saying, oh, that's your opinion, just know they haven't heard what you said. And that's where our problem is. Our political problem is a knowledge problem. We don't know how to disagree. We don't know how to provide evidence. We don't know how to be confident in a well-researched opinion. We don't know how to take advantage of other people's views without feeling attacked. That's where we are stuck. So again, this semester, I'm going to keep on saying, ChatGPT is not the thing. Getting answers from elsewhere is not the thing, because what it's eating is not simply knowledge, it's your confidence. You will not be confident to stand up for your idea when you're not the one who has done the work. For me, I think confidence is everything. There's no knowledge without confidence. None. So I'm putting it out to you that be committed to do the work, be committed to read, be committed to understand, and be committed to not falling for these gaslighting questions. How do you know? Did God really say? Did, that's your opinion. Not all people. Let's not, those are gaslighting questions. They are gaslighting questions that reduce our confidence, and yet we have done the work. But the question is, did we do the work? That's the question I'm leaving for you. Will you do the work? Will you do the work? Because Africa is not going to move if we don't do the work. It's not. The intellectual work. And we are going to be gaslighted. We're going to be asked, is this cultural? Where in Africa has it been done before? We're going to be asked those questions. But we have to know, who are these people asking these questions and what do they want? That's a question that we always have to answer for ourselves.